Iranian pirate who settled on the island of Lucca.
So they called them
Godgers. You took the words out of my boosh, as usual. An artful Godger.
Well, now, whose turn next? Yes, Tim Brooke-Taylor's turn.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. It is pronounced Gogga.
Bravo.
And it is one of the few words we must have borrowed from the Hottentots in South Africa. Why we borrowed it, I don't know, because we have a better word of our own. It's for an insect. It's a word for an insect. Well, specifically what we would call a creepy crawly. It's a Hottentot word which we borrowed in an insect, sort of creepy crawly type insect. Yeah.
Right enough. Now, Victoria, your go.
Now, Portuguese people are more like English people than you might have thought. Because even though they don't speak English, poor things, they eat dumplings. They don't call them dumplings, they call them goggas. But they do eat them, and they're almost the same as our dumplings, except they're made out of mutton suet, and they've got herbs in. But they don't know any better, you see, the poor things. That's what they are, dumplings.
Righty-ho. Well, now, it's kind of an insect. It's a citizen of Lucca, and it is this Portuguese dumpling. Very savoury object. In fact, your choice.
Yes. Yes, well now, a spirit voice came to me from the left saying that it's not the wrong spelling. It's the wrong spelling for a Maltese word.
You mean he was drunk, this spirit voice?
The one on the right, which was the dumplings, is also Godja or Gaga. I am informed, spirit message from the right, sober, that also it's not a Portuguese spelling. So we are driven to the Hottentot insect.
And quite right, too.
Well, I wonder if that was premature or whether he was simply telling the truth. You've got to own up now it was Tim. True or bluff?
Do they have a second chance, do they not? No.
Yes, yes, they could have another one if they wanted it. But I don't think they do. You gave the game away. Yes. Didn't tease them along, but that was
the spirit.
It was ice cold logic got you there.
It was worth a try.
Very good. Means an insect. 2-0. Next word is forecat. Godfrey.
Well, it's a very interesting piece of military equipment. It was carried about by the 16th century foot soldier, and it was like this. It was a sort of fork, which they stuck into the ground, and then they put their musket into the aperture, and they used it to get a precise aim on their enemy. Very remarkable piece of 16th century ordnance.
Mm. Now, what does Angharad say to us?
Oh, very remarkable.
This is a word used in the glove-making trade, especially in old establishments where gloves are still sewn by hand. The proper pronunciation is forked, and it is a name for the piece of leather that is sewn between the fingers here of the glove. That strip of leather.
She got
forked.
lovely hands.
Thank you.
I've been mesmerised by your hands.
That side's all right.
Yeah. Right.
So she says that. Now, what does Frank tell us?
You're fishing in your canoe in a river, doesn't matter which one, in British Columbia, and you have with you a Canadian American Indian, sometimes miscalled a Red Indian, and you hook a trout, and he says, you have forecat. And you say, cook it for me. And he said, no. The forecat is a trout which has a muddy... I'm sorry.
Cook it for cat.
No, that was his line.
Oh,
dear.
sorry.
Oh, dear, yeah.
Press on, Buster.
Actually, in a way...
Disconcerted him. Look.
In a way, only cats could eat it because it has a muddy flavour. And your guide would recommend that it be marinated in apple juice. That's all I have to say, really.
So it's a trout you feed the cats, British Columbia, part of a glove, in between the fingers, and sort of little rest that you put your musket on and aim the better for it. So Tim chooses.
I didn't say it was...
I'm on my own, apparently, according to my helpful...
No, he said it.
Oh, he said it. Well, I must correct.
It's
He
important.
didn't say it was for
Yes,
cats.
yes.
He said it's got a rather muddy flavour, though. Oh, dear.
But he did say it could well be for cats, to give it to your cat. And first of all,
This is like a crux in Beowulf or something. I shouldn't bother.
Funny funny you should talk about crux, because we had forks earlier on, didn't we? Both the first two were forks. Godfrey, I thought that was fairly impressive, the 16th century musket. Not remarkable, we didn't think. No. And we didn't know quite why you thought it was remarkable.
Well, shall I withdraw the word remarkable?
Certainly.
Okay. I withdraw the word
You
remarkable.
withdraw it.
Yes.
It was a bit...
Yes.
Yes, so Angharad, you have forked gloves, too, beautiful hands. That was rather short as well, wasn't it?
Yes.
Frank went on for about an hour and a half. Now, I reckon...
With
on
help.
the principle, with help, yes, this is true. Thank you for saying help. I think it was almost definitely not... it's Frank.
You say it's Frank as though he were the definition. What you mean is, yes, he said it was the trout. True or bluff? He has to own up now. He's got
Can I
it
change
somewhere.
my mind?
He's stretching the moment. No, it wasn't the trout. Got to be something else. Now, whoever gave that true definition tells you. There. There it is. I must say, I agree with you withdrawing the word remarkable, Godfrey, because it's nothing more or less than a forked stick. But it was true, and you didn't get it. It's a forked stick they balanced the guns on. 3-0, goodness me. Glastig is the next one. Tim Brooke-Taylor.
Glastig is the assembly of Welsh bards and druids, which is roughly what the General Synod is to the Church of England, or the Last Night of the Proms is to non-music lovers. It's a colourful affair where people gather together. The bards wear blue robes and the druids wear green robes, and people who are trying to get elected wear white robes. It's an assembly, Welsh assembly.
Sounds very like Call My Bluff when you think of it, really. Victoria, it's your turn.
Imagine you're in the Highlands of Scotland, and the mist is rising, and the wind's whistling, and the kilts are swirling. And what's that in the distance? It's a yellow-haired hag with goat-like feet, some would say. And some would say, it's a little fat lady with a green dress on. Well, what it is, it's a Glastig, and it's a ghost. So there.
Oh. It's a ghost, you say? Right. Let's hear from Arthur. His turn.
Glastig is an Irish name for the mould that forms on stale bread, particularly the greenish mould that you get on wholemeal bread. And I have to tell you that when Sir Alexander Fleming, bless him, discovered penicillin, the Irish were tickled like mad, because for years and years Irish mothers had been spreading this greenish mould on cuts and bruises in order to help heal them.
Did you notice they didn't,
Jolly interesting.
didn't seem to listen to you?
Let me tell you what they say again. Let me remind you, it's an assembly of druids. It's a female ghost, or a little lady in green, and it's mould, greenish. Godfrey.
Well, I have the great advantage of this charming Welsh lady on my right here, and though she has the name so beautiful as Angharad, she really doesn't think it's a Welsh synod. That drives us back to either the Scottish or Irish alternatives. And I think the Irish one is so exceedingly odd that I believe it, because it's Irish.
You think it was what Arthur said
That's
about
right,
the
I think it
green
was
mould?
Arthur.
Arthur,
Yes.
were you teasing them again?
My heavens, you're brilliant.
Yes, you were fooling them. Who gave the true definition? We have to have it. Here it comes. It was that one. It was the Scottish female ghost. 3-1, coming up on the rails now. Yarf is the next one. Angharad.
Yarf is one of the many cant words used by thieves and vagabonds. It is of Romany origin, and, it's the word for cow's milk.
What, dear?
That's what it means.
Milk.
Oh,
Cow's milk.
Silver top.
Okay. There are many Romany words of Romany origin for cow's milk. I have a little list. I'll read them. I hope you don't mind. Yarum, Lupa, Lap, and Roughpeck. Also Romany words for milk.
My dear. How
So?
perfectly astonishing.
Well, you never know. You just never know. And now, Frank.
Nasty. Not nice, Yarf. Beware. If you go far into the Pacific, you might well catch Yarf. Skin. Nasty skin disease. Deficient in vitamin B and strikes. Symptoms: watch your fingernails and your toenails. But, no, hang on. No, come on. To pay attention, because they start to curl inwards.
Oh, you brought in such an ugly note. It's such a shame.
People all over the country.
It's very difficult to do it all at once, but still you could do first the toenails, then... Well, anyway, it doesn't do to linger on that, Godfrey.
Well, it isn't so nasty as Frank suggested, but it is a very depressing word. You see, it's a particular kind of swamp in the lowlands of Scotland. It's a very wet peat bog in which the peat is mixed with clay or sand, thus rendering it, even when cut and dried, virtually useless as a household fuel.
Yes, not terribly attractive. A swamp, a skin disease, and a Romany word for milk.
It's one of the most boring words.
Victorians choose. Boring as they may be, you have to choose.
Sorry? I'm not quite sure.
It's only a 2-to-1 chance, Victoria.
Okay, just trying to get it right. They don't know. They're not offering any help at all. Well,
We have
did you say it
ways
was
of making it.
thieves? A thieves' word?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cant word used by thieves and vagabonds.
Yes.
In the olden days.
I don't see why they want a word for milk. I mean,
There are many. There are
Jemmy
many.
or pint of bitter or something like that. I can understand, but milk, it's a bit feeble. Now, yarf, I think we're supposed to think it sounds like scurf, aren't we?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
You are clever,
Which
Victoria.
is vitamin C deficiency, you see.
Oh, is it?
And B's the next one along. But I don't know. I don't know. And swamp, that's very boring, Godfrey. That might be the case. Boring fuel. Useless fuel. It doesn't sound Scottish, though. You're looking a bit shifty again, though, Godfrey, so I can't tell.
He has ways of making you yawn.
Well, I'm going to say it's the milk, because I don't like the look of you two boys. So
You think
I'll
it's
say
the milk?
milk.
You thought Angharad was telling the truth, now she has to own up. Nothing. No, not milk.
Frank looks
Now, let's
smug.
see who gave the true definition of yarf.
Oh.
Yes, Scots or not, there it is. Yarf is a swamp, and I think a Scotch one, hoot hoot. Telepoon is the next word. Rather nice word, Victoria.
Please, speak when I'm trying to speak. A telepoon is a Buddhist monk without visible means of support. And he goes around praying and preaching and preaching and praying. And when he stops preaching and praying, and he wants, egg and chips, cup of tea, he can't just dip into whatever it is they wear and buy one. He has to go round the congregation with a begging bowl, you see. It's a terrible life, but this is the way they live, these Buddhists. And that's what he is, a mendicant monk.
Okay. Arthur Marshall's go.
A telepoon is an alloy. A sort of very near whitish kind of brass. Found in... Frank, please. Found in the Telepoon district of West Bengal. And I have an interesting fact here to tell you. That the coefficient of expansion of Telepoon, about which you've all been wondering, is in the region of 0.015. And if a more boring item of information has ever been produced on...
No, Arthur, no, I've heard worse. I've said here men and boys,
Anyhow, that's
believe
the
me.
coefficient.
No, it's Tim's go now.
Proving that something can be even more boring. From Bolivia, the natives of Bolivia are probably intelligent in every way, but they're not aware, apparently, that smoking can damage your health. And they do take the occasional drag from their telepoon, which is a pipe, a curved wooden pipe. And they smoke not tobacco, as we know it, but the dried leaves from an aromatic plant. And they get a sort of mild narcosis from this. It's a pipe. The Telepoon Smoker of the Year award is no doubt awarded every year in Bolivia.
Angharad, you are all alone on the telepoon.
It's a sort of alloy, sort of brass. It's a pipe such as you smoke or Bolivians smoke, and it's a Buddhist monk. And Angharad has the chance of choosing lucky girl.
Right, thank you. Well, let's start by eliminating. I don't think it's the alloy, because alloys are not found. They are made. Good point, isn't it? Isn't that a good point?
Excellent.
The Bolivian pipe. Is it the name for the actual pipe or the smoker?
The pipe.
You thought you'd fox him there, didn't you?
Yes.
No. Quick as a flash.
What language do they speak in Bolivia?
Bolivian.
Yes.
But it's a Spanishy language, isn't it? No, it can't be that.
Bolivia is Spanish.
Yes, so it doesn't look sort of Spanishy word. Anyway, so that leaves us with a victorious Buddhist monk. I think I'll settle for that.
You settle for the monk. She did say it too, Bluff, Victoria. Perfectly true. Uncannily a bullseye, there it was. Telepoon is the mendicant. Juba is the next one. Frank Muir tells you about that.
You are in the cotton fields of old Virginia, and you've picked your cotton. You get back, and you wish to be jubilant. You wish to jubilate. So you have a juba. You all dance, and there's much thigh-slapping and hand-clapping and shouts of, Juba, Juba, Juba. And the night of old Virginia rings with this kind of happy scene after a day spent in the cotton fields.
Around the world with Frank Muir. British Columbia, no?
Worse than his famous Turn the Bells, which he's always referring to. However, Godfrey, you'll go.
Well, not actually Juba, but notice my modern Latin pronunciation, a juba, and it's an old Roman measure of area, approximately 1/5 of an acre, and 12 jubera, I now break into the plural form, as you see, makes up one actus, A-C-T-U-S, or larger area of land, rather like a hectare in modern times. Now, under Roman law, every fully qualified Roman citizen was entitled to own 4 jubera to cultivate his own vines, which is why Italy, even today, is such a wine-rich country.
Oh, my.
Now, that wasn't boring, was it?
No, I found that fascinating.
That's the way to do it.
There was a certain
We were
completeness about
spellbound.
it. You didn't leave anything out, Godfrey, I'll give you that. Angharad.
A juba was a large earthenware jug which was popularly used in the 14th century for holding ale. And some people might know, or those that read Chaucer, that the miller ruminates on a juba. And I'll just quote a little bit. What asketh man to have but briad and cheese and goodly juba filled?
Yes,
My
I bet there was
dear.
no reply to that either.
No, there really is
Ooh, went
not.
quiet.
Yes, it did a bit. Still, it was literature. And so it's a jug. It's a very old type of jug. It's a very nice kind of dance, and it's a very necessary, or was, necessary measure of land. So, Arthur, make your choice.
Hold on.
Say Frank.
Hold on. Oh, it's very, very difficult. Your 14th century ale holder. Oh, it could well be. And that little bit of quotation to go with it, so persuasive. And Godfrey, is that really endlessly boring? I mean, what am I saying? Endlessly delightful. But somehow old Frank's cotton pickers going jub-jub and hopping about. I think I go for poor old Frank.
You go for poor old Frank.
back
Poor
on
old
that.
Frank. Were you teasing him?
No.
No! You've got one, Arthur. You've got one. That's it. It is indeed a jubilant sort of dance against all likelihood. Here's another word, pandal, and it's Arthur to define.
Come with me to Sumatra. And you're in
First class.
Sumatra, and you have a nice house in Sumatra, and a great ceremony is going to take place. And you want to have erected a little structure, like women's institutes, marquees, things of that sort. And it's a sort of awning put outside a house, and particularly popular when a Sumatran girl is about to be married. And because she's very, very proud of having a pandal at all, which is quite an achievement. And the pandal, after the marriage ceremony, is left outside the house for all of a week so that she can show off her pandal.
Yes, indeed. She would want to do that. Tim Brooke-Taylor.
Come with me to an invalid's delicate stomach, because that is what you give to an invalid with a delicate stomach, a pandal. For those of you who like recipes, if you're ready with your pencils at home, I'd like to give you a short 17th century recipe for a pandal. If sharpness be displeasant or displeasant to the stomach, a pandal of barley, cream, and almond milk be fit to solace him that doth cast up. So if you've got anybody at home that doth cast up a lot, this is exactly what you want. Pandal is the doctor's order.
What is it? I forgot to listen.
It's a little invalid
remedy.
Slops, you know, slops.
Thank you. Next.
Victoria.
All right, come with me to the bottom of the bed.
Uh-oh.
And there, please, you will find not a pyjama case, as you might have thought, but a pandal which hangs at the bottom of a four-poster bed underneath the tester, which is the canopy that hangs from the four posts. It's like a half curtain which hangs at the bottom of the bed, and it's embroidered with the coat of arms of the family that own the bed and the house.
So, it's a bed curtain, part of the bed curtain, she says, invalid food and a ceremonial marquee in some place eastward, it seems. Frank, your choice.
We're putting the curtain in the pending tray for the time being. Might well return to it.
Okay.
Might not.
Up to you.
Sorry to leave you on tenterhooks.
No, you carry on. You carry on.
Time's running out, but perhaps that's what you wanted to do, Frank.
It's oh, what a beautiful awning. I was going to add "sung by Sumatra," but I didn't. We think that is a clear bluff, so it can't be that. It could be this medieval remedy. No, we think it's the curtain.
The bed curtain. It was Victoria who spoke of that. True or bluff, Victoria?
It's Bluff.
No. Oh, no. Could we have the true definition? Because it's just as well to have it.
Women's Institute marquee.
Indeed.
Brilliant.
One marquee to you.
Well, you did let the time trickle out there, Frank, so there's no real time for any more, and perhaps that's what you were playing with. No, you're a much better sport than that. The final scores do seem to be 5-3, and Frank Muir's team has won. Shall we take a little glance at the chap-fallen losers? There they are. Look at them. Oh, no. Cheerful to the end. Anyway, we shall be back next time with another batch of skewmers from the Oxford English Dictionary. Until then, goodbye from Godfrey Smith.
Goodbye.
Tim Brooke-Taylor. Goodbye. Angharad Rees.
Goodbye.
Victoria Wood.
Goodbye.
Frank Muir.
Goodbye.
Arthur Marshall.
Good night.
And goodbye. Well, hello again. Call My Bluff, the electronic version of Liar Dice, to which respectability is lent by Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Very happy to be here again and fighting back with, on my left, Victoria Wood. Good evening. And on my right, Tim Brooke-Taylor.
Good evening.
And Baron Munchausen's father, Frank Muir.
And once again, my team of Angharad Rees.
Good evening.
And on my left, I'm still trying to work that out, Godfrey Smith.
Good evening.
Now, yes, that's it, isn't it? Ring a bell, get a word, that's what I say. Swaddler being that word, Arthur Marshall and his team will define it 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are no good. One's the true one. That's the one that Frank and co. try to pick out. So off Arthur goes with Swaddler.
I would like you to imagine me in very affluent circumstances and giving a very, very grand dinner party. Polished table, silverware, silver candlesticks, silver salt cellars. And suddenly a lady guest leans forward and says, "Arthur, what beautiful swaddlers." and she has spotted the ornamental grooves around my candlesticks. It's an ornamental groove made by a silversmith. I need hardly say that we have to go to dear old Italy for the best swaddlers. 15th century Florentine silversmiths executed lovely swaddlers.
Hang on. They're grooves. So you buy the grooves and then sort of
an ornamented indentation round a candlestick just where the candle goes in. Perhaps you don't have them.
We have silver candles.
Boo.
But if any lady was so forward to appreciate them, you might say, well, fancy noticing a chap's swaddlers. I mean, just isn't done. Anyway, enough of that. Or, yes, Tim, you'll go.
It's not a very well-known fact that Lord Soper and I belong to the same golf club, and if he were to cheat at golf, which he would never do, being a gentleman, I could call him a swaddler, because this is a rudish sort of nickname for a Methodist minister. He could, for example, swaddle me out of my first hole-in-one, but he wouldn't. It comes from Ireland. Unlikely, really, is. It's not a hotbed of Methodism, Ireland, but it's a rudish sort of nickname for a Methodist minister. So there.
Righty-ho. Then Victoria Wood.
When cheesemakers make cheese, hard cheese, like Gloucester and cheddar, they put it on the table and something happens to it. It starts to sweat. Well, these things happen. And what they do... No, you would if you were going to be grated. Come on.
Spar.
So, when it starts to sweat, they swaddle it up, they wrap it up in unsized paper, and that soaks up the sweat. Sorry to use these words, but this is life.
Soaks up perspiration.
The perspiration,
was the word you were fumbling
the hardened milk.
Well, anyway, it's a
Those
paper
sort of varicose cheeses. Is it with the blue veins?
No, hard, Gloucester, cheddar, the hard ones.
It was a good joke, though. Anyway, but it's a kind of a paper... It's a paper frill round the cheese.
I didn't know he was making a joke. I'm sorry.
It's a paper frill round the cheese. It is a special sort of groove in silver candlesticks, and it's a jolly term for a Methodist minister.
Well,
Frank. Well, an unjolly term?
rudish.
Rude term. He's not listening anyway.
Well, no, actually, it's really quite difficult, this one, Robbie.
Is that
And,
true, Francis?
He's doing my music at the moment.
The trouble is, you see, the
difficult to do
swaddler
both.
with its swaddling clothes is whether it's a bluff or a double bluff. It can't be silver grooves you buy from Italy and bash round a candle. It can't be. Whether it's Tim's Irish word for Methodist middle. The double bluff. It's not the cheese, but I'm choosing it.
It's not the cheese, but he has chosen it. That was Victoria. Show or bluff? Nothing. Let us have the true definition of the word swaddler. Lo, where it comes.
It can't be.
Yes. It's a funny term, a scathing term, I think, for a Methodist minister. And now our next word is, well, I'd say telly-do. Yes, I would. I wonder what Frank says.
Well, I honestly don't know. It could be Toledo or something. It's a Javanese skunk. Four-legged, not a Javanese scoundrel. A Javanese skunk, four-legged, huge, very hairy, and a magnificent practitioner of do-it-yourself BO. Now, so impressive a demonstration does he give of fallout that when he practices this individual's skill, whole downwind Javanese villages have been known to take to the hills.
This has got to be a fact. This has got to be true, hasn't it? Yes.
Now, let's try Godfrey Smith.
Well, Te-le-do, notice the pronunciation, was the name of a puppet government in Romania installed by the Bolsheviks in 1918. It was called Te-le-du because those are, of course, the Romanian letters TLD in our alphabet, and it stood for three enormously long words, which I won't bother you with, but think of...
Bother us.
I really, they're too long.
Don't be bothered.
But think of the SDP, much to the left of the SDP, but the same idea of using initials to describe a political party, in this case in Romania in 1918.
Right. Now it's Angharad Rees.
Can't be bothered.
Te-le-du is off-white pumice stone, which, finely powdered, used to be imported into Britain as a polishing agent for burnishing metal or precious stones. It is named after an island, a volcanic island, which was called Te-le-du, which is near Kiyoshima in western Japan, where it is mined, in fact.
All right.
Red.
Yes, it's pumice stone. It's a sort of skunk, and it was a Romanian government, puppet government. Arthur's choice.
And don't forget pumice stone was one of our great English prime ministers.
Far-fetched.
I'm happy to say that we
Far-fetched, as
have
we say,
forgotten.
of cheese from Peru.
I'm only filling in while Arthur has a jiffy
Yes.
kid.
There we are. Well, now, it's all very, very, very difficult. Godfrey, if only you had given us that extra information,
I
it might just have turned
Yes, yes.
about your Romanian puppet government. Fascinating it was. Dear, your Japanese pumice stone.
Frank has to be right with all these villages.
Quite
Clearing,
so.
doesn't he? So if
We are of one mind upon this side, and we think that it's your ghastly, you lowered the tone terribly, your ghastly Javanese skunk.
Frank
So
said
be
it. True or bluff?
So be it, is what I say.
Yes, indeed, it is a Javanese skunk. Of very powerful habits. Gelazin or gelazin or gelatsin, I really don't know. Tim, your turn.
Well, I must warn those of you with a nervous disposition to close your eyes now, because the only way I can show you what a gelazin is to break into a broad smile. So if you're ready, just close your eyes now, right? Now, a gelazin is the good King Charles's golden days. It's the words that two little adorable dimples you can see either side of my cheeks like that. Those are the gelazin. Good King Charles would have said, "What wonderful gelazin you have." Okay, you can open your eyes now. Two little dimples.
Now it is Victoria's turn.
Well, you can't see one coming. This is what I have to tell you. Because it is...
It's like a bus, isn't it?
It's a 15th century cavalryman used for skirmishing and surprise attacks. And they were virtually wiped out at the Battle of Contagio in 1477, which is why you don't hear so much about them now, I suppose.
Good.
Yes, I was thrilled.
Right, now Arthur's turn.
It's pronounced gelazin, and for a very good reason. It's an albumin content that was derived from Chinese seaweed about the beginning of this century, and when refined down, it forms a ghastly kind of amorphous jelly, hence the name gelazin, on which they can breed, in laboratories, I hasten to say, on which they can breed bacteria and other cultures for medicinal examination. It's sort of an amorphous jelly. What?
No, don't say what, Arthur. Do it again. It's a 15th century cavalryman. It's a seaweed culture, albumin, all like that. And a dimple, I think you said, Tim.
A pretty little dimple.
Yes. Godfrey, your choice.
Well, I thought about the cavalrymen, but I had a feeling that they would have survived to fight another day, so I reluctantly crossed them off my list. And as for the seaweed, it sounded a little bit too much like a play on gelatin to me. And so absurd though it must seem, I opt for Tim's dimples.
He opts.
Who wouldn't?
And it was Tim who said it. Said dimples. True or bluff?
It is.
Yea, verily. Yes. Gelazin is a dimple, or are dimples, one or the other. Tabellion's the next word. Godfrey Smith tell you about that.
Tabellion. It's long before women went to the office. It was a species of early Roman male secretary. He was the tongued scribe who scribbled down, presumably in a sort of Latin longhand, the speeches made in the Roman Senate. And when he was not busy in the Senate doing that, what he would do, he would take down at dictation from lovesick swains their letters to their loved ones. So he had both an official and unofficial function in ancient Rome. Tabellion.
Just wondered, when you said tongued, did you mean togered, Godfrey? I don't know. Tongued, I couldn't just...
I think togered would be a better way
Yeah,
of putting
tongued's
it.
a good one. I think it's an improvement
Let us say
myself.
togered.
I find it confusing.
In falconry circles, a tabellion is a rather ornate and showy hood which is clapped over the head of the bird in the presence of royalty or important dignitaries. This hood is very often adorned with the feathers and sort of crest of its aristocratic owners.
Yes, yes. You never know. Frank, his go.
I think it's that.
I go any further.
Are you in a position to know?
Come on.
There is another meaning, which is it's an early form of bolus.
Of what?
A bolus.
Like Fred Truman.
No. Well, in a sense, but I won't go into that. It's a medicinal pill, really, and it's made by. It used to be made by two sort of butter pats with grooves in them, which you did that with, and now drop the pills. Or you could roll it by hand on a marble slab, and it was mainly used medieval times for alleviating internal disorders which it would be improper and unattractive for me to mention on this family programme.
Could you just mention that they'll cut it out afterwards, but we will hear?
No. We can't afford cutting this programme. No.
So, it's a Roman scribe or secretary. It is a pill, and it is some sort of decorative falcon's hood. Tim Brooke-Taylor to decide.
Well, Angharad, they put this hood on when important people were there. You didn't explain why.
She's not bound to.
You don't have
Don't have to say another word.
Okay.
She
It's
doesn't.
just to make it look more attractive. It's part of the ceremony.
Of course.
Right, sorry.
This
Otherwise,
etiquette
they
of
bite,
falconry.
if they don't put the hood on, they bite the important person's nose. That's why they hood them.
Right.
Books must be hooded.
Right. Godfrey,
You lost the initiative there,
long
mate.
before women went to the office,
Yes.
scribe. Long before women went to the office. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. Now the love letters from Tonga seemed.
Yes, I'm sorry about Tonga. I did
Tonga
mean
was
Sorry about
confusing,
that.
I thought. Frank, medicinal pill with grooves in. You notice he picked you up on your grooves, your
Quite
silver
so.
grooves.
I've made
but-
them popular.
Yes,
Yes.
they've suddenly caught on, these grooves. And I think they've caught on so much so that I think it's... Who do you think it is? Yeah, I think so too. I think there's no doubt about it. It's Frank, who is with his medicinal grooves.
Frank says it was a pill that you made with butter pats.
Yes.
True or bluff, Frank? No, nothing to do with that. He's just pulling your leg. Who
Back
gave
in
the
the
true
match.
definition? Who gave the true definition?
Oh, it's that.
Godfrey did. And Tongad or Togard, it was a scribe or secretary to all, an interesting juncture. Wallace is the next word, and Victoria defines it.
In the days of Queen Victoria, when we had ostlers dealing with horses, with the men with the check waistcoats and the gaiters and the straws in their mouths, they used to use jargon to deal with the names of the parts of the horses. And a horse's wallis is not what you might think it is. It is the highest part of the horse between its shoulder blades, and when you measure a horse in hands, you measure from the ground to that part of its back.
Okay.
And how fascinating.
I wonder what Arthur has to tell us at this point.
Wallace is one of many old country names for those dear creatures, the hare, those that go mad in March and are so delicious when jugged. And that's really all I have to say about it, except a little Jacobean poem, section of when, as the watchful greyhound hath a Wallace spied, full fain he springeth on his prey to seize.
Badly read, nice poem.
It was my audition for the RADA.
Let us hear from Tim Brooke-Taylor now.
Yes, I think so.
The Wallace, or Wally, is an unusually large 9-pin used in the form of skittles if you happen to be in Cheshire
Thank you.
or Shropshire. Do you want me to go on? Next?
No, you
No.
take no notice
Take
of
no
barracking
notice
it
at all.
against the rules.
It's lined up behind the 2 ranks of ordinary skittles, and it is particularly difficult to hit, obviously, because you've got to knock the other ones out of the way first. It's a great Wally.
They say that it is the top part of a horse. It's a hare, and it's a sort of 9-pin. Angharad, your go.
Was it the part of the horse they measured, or was it the measurement that's a Wallace?
The Wallace is the name of the part of the horse. They use that part of the horse to measure the horse in hands. It is a part of the horse.
And
It's
which
the highest
part?
part of its back between its shoulder blades.
Oh, I see. Oh, thank you.
Any more questions?
No, that's fine.
The whole lot's the Wallace collection.
I don't think it's a Derbyshire. Where?
No, that's where I come from. It
Oh, I
comes
knew
from
it was-
Cheshire or Shropshire.
Oh, Cheshire or Shropshire.
And Shropshire.
I think if it was Wally, I might believe it, but Wallace seems a very sort of formal name.
They call it the Wally, but the official name was
Yes,
Wallace.
I see.
What about
Actually, on
Arthur's
instinct, I'm going... Sorry?
Oh, no, I just wondered, what about... Arthur came next. He said it was...
Yes, well, I'm coming to Arthur.
Oh, I see.
I think the judge was bashing the jury then.
Arthur, I just... Because I have a feeling about it, I think I'll plumb for the hair.
Oh, my dear, how
Plump for the hair,
sweet
goody
of
goody.
you.
That was Arthur. Oh, well, he sounded rather pleased.
How kind.
Oh, my God!
No.
Sorry, T. Sorry.
Arthur was telling an untruth there. Who gave the true definition of this word, Wallace?
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. The highest part of a horse is a Wallace. 3-2. Nip and tuck. Strongle is our next word. Angharad.
In Anglo-Saxon times, a strongle was a piece of rope that was put across a shallow stream for those that were trying to cross the stream to hold on to for support. There is, in fact, still a strongle at Chandler's Ford. That's right. It was an old Anglo-Saxon one. Of course, the rope has to be renewed from time to time, but the supports are, in fact, Anglo-Saxon.
Chandler's
Did I make
Ford,
that
dear,
clear?
where is that?
Hampshire.
Hampshire.
Yes.
Where else,
Have we
Arthur?
time to get... No,
Go out to inspect
Really?
it, you were thinking. Quite so. Frank Muir's turn.
A strungle is very small. Tiny. You know, you can just see one through the microscope, and it's a very tiny, very small thread worm, which, when swallowed, sets up home and breeds, and eventually kills the body it's in. But Arthur's looking terrified.
well, I am.
Don't go white, Arthur. It's only found in the stomachs of grouse.
Well, that's killed the game in must be stone dead.
They all went very small.
Yes.
I'm never going to touch one, ever. Will you have the grouse, sir? Certainly not, thank you very much.
Didn't you hear what Frank Muir said?
Oh, you worried
Oh,
everybody.
dear.
What
That's
a
very
shame.
worrying.
Will there be letters?
Shall we skip deftly on?
Shall I do another one?
Godfrey.
Yes, it's much more wholesome than that, you'll be relieved to hear. It's just in the timber trade, you know, when you saw a piece of wood like that, if if it doesn't cut cleanly down and you don't get that lovely fine sawdust, the wood is said to stronggle or to be stronggle, and it happens mostly to very young or very old trees. That's all it is.
Well, it's a sort of old rope handrail in Old English times. It's wood that won't cut very cleanly, and it's this threadworm in the stomachs of grouse or grice, I suppose. Victoria, your choice. Which will you have?
Well,
How can you saw wood and not get sawdust? Whatever you call it.
If you don't get sawdust, you just get rather rough, fibrous parts.
Oh, no.
It's.
You don't.
You get a deposit, but not such a nice one as
No,
you think you're going to get.
No.
I'm sorry.
These are lies you're telling
I
me.
can't do more for you.
Well, this thing across the river, I can't believe that anything from Anglo-Saxon times is still there. I can believe the rope's not still there. The supports would be in the water, and the water would rot the wood, surely.
I didn't say they were wood.
Oh, what did you say they were?
Don't answer.
But what
not
else did
ancient.
they
You
have?
don't
They
have
didn't
to
have
answer.
expanded concrete, did they? Well, I'm not sure. Your threadworm, stomachs of grouse. Who'd
Lovely.
want to look in the stomach of a grouse? Is what I want
It's
to
like
know.
people's court, this, isn't it? Cross-examined.
Thread.
Well-
You can get an awful lot of tiny threads, very, very, very small, into the tummy of a grouse.
Your
They
turn,
bleed,
Victoria,
you see,
your
and they go
turn.
awful.
Right, then.
Come on.
Show me your card.
Right.
Oh, I wonder if she's done right. Frank,
Yes.
did you talk her
When
out
they
of it?
breed, you
Thank
Well,
There, she did call you a bluff there, I think.
It's
Very
anybody's
signaling.
game.
4-2. Rather good, Arthur, for you. Taggart is the next word. Arthur will define.
Well, now, in the wilds of Ireland, ladies working in the fields may very often be married ladies and have a tiny kiddie with them. And in order to keep the child quiet while they are digging potatoes or whatever it may be they do in Ireland, they place the baby in a taggar. It's a sort of homemade...
Bog.
What? Bog?
I was ahead of you.
It's a sort of homemade basket, rather like a Moses basket, in that it's constructed of woven bulrushes with a rather sort of cheapish canvas surround. It's a sort of child's cot for use in the fields when mum is working.
Yeah.
Okay. Tim Brooke-Taylor now to tell us a thing.
Far be it from me to disagree with Arthur, but he's completely wrong. A taggar in India, before the use of telephones or telegrams, we don't have telegrams ourselves, but before those days, a taggar was a team of runners who would carry your message from village to village. Presumably there were separate ones if there was a long distance between the villages, and take their message rather like a relay race, a sort of taggargram.
In a cleft stick.
What else?
I would prefer it to be, but I cannot vouch for that.
Oh.
Victoria.
You're in a mid-Pennine cemetery. There's a funeral going on, and the rain is beating down, as it so often does in these Pennine villages. If you glance at the nameplate on the lid of the coffin, and if you glance at the tip of your umbrella, the ferrule, you may happen to notice that they're both made of the same material, taggar, which is very thin sheets of sheet metal overlaid with tin. It's very thin, it's as thin as paper, and that's what they make out of it.
They say it's a sort of bassinet, as they were once called, I think. Certain sort of sheet iron and a runner deliver messages. Frank.
Well, I'm dumbfounded, Robert. It's,
Flabbergasted.
That's all to the good.
it's a little bit difficult.
Do you give in?
I have a word with my friend, my good friend here.
I don't think it's a sheep.
Time points.
Time's running out. Not on your side this time, Frank, I think.
Well, yes. Ah, yes, fine. Well, no problem, really. It's keeping you on tenterhooks, keeping you awake, hopefully. We don't think it's the sheet metal, because it doesn't sound like sheet metal. Or it does, but it shouldn't. And it's the runners is a bit sort of playing tag, which we think is clearly a bluff. So we are of the impression that it's Uncle Art's rubbish about the Irish basket.
Oh, was it
How
rubbish?
dare you?
Arthur, respond. I say. Let us have the true definition of this word, tagar. It's the sheet iron, it seems. Well, tagar certainly means sheet metal. Look at it which way you will. But here we have Greggle, and that's the last word. Comfortable time, Frank, for Greggle.
Ah, yes, that's West Country. Not quite sure whereabouts in the West. Would you buy Dorset? Or
Yes,
Somerset
yes.
or Devon?
How much are you offering?
Probably Dorset, Now, in there, down in that part, Dorsetish part of the world, they don't call bluebells by the name of bluebells, as we do in the decadent southeast. They call them Greggles. And Thomas Hardy, well-known writer...
From what county?
What?
What county did he come from?
Oh, down Dorset. From Dorset. Dorset, that's what I mean, Dorset. County
Yes,
Dorset.
well done.
Now, Thomas Hardy, he knew this because, if you don't believe me, rush to your bookshelves. Chapter 20, Mayor of Casterbridge. Greggles were picked.
We move swiftly on, Godfrey, because time runs out.
Well, I'm awfully sorry about this, but whichever way you look at it, the Greggle is an extremely boring creature. It's a small marine worm, just about that size, about the size of a woodlouse, which bores its way into ships' timbers, and it is thought that it does this to ease the extreme boredom of being a hermaphrodite.
Boredom? What do you
Yes.
mean?
It is both boring and it
What
bores.
could be jollier?
Speak for yourself.
We speed on to Angharad.
Greggle is an oldish verb which means to cluster together, to form a mass, to coalesce into a mass.
Now, I'm going to have to
And-
stop you there, my dear girl, because time is very nearly up, and Arthur is going to have to make a choice of whether it be a bluebell, whether it be a woodworm, I think you said a marine woodworm, and to cluster. Arthur's choice.
We don't think it's this cluster thing, dear, beautifully though you said it as usual. Your odious hermaphrodite marine worm, no, we think it's Frank's Dorset, Devon, somewhere down there, bluebell.
Frank, true or bluff?
I'm a dear.
He's coming out! Well, there you are. How splendid, yes. A Greggle is a Dorset bluebell, and there was a clean fought, splendid contest. 6-2. Arthur Marshall's team has won. Let us look at the losers. Let us see them. Ah, they're turning ugly. No, they're cheerful. Cheerful as ever. We shall be back next week with more definitions that were left with the underwriters. Until then, goodbye from Tim Brooke-Taylor. Godfrey Smith.
Goodbye.
Victoria Wood. Angharad Rees. Arthur Marshall. Frank Muir.
Good night.
And goodbye. It's Call My Bluff with the ancient mariner who hopes to stop one of three. Of course, I mean Frank Muir.
Good evening. And it's my pleasure to welcome back on the team an actress not only for her beauty but for her cunning, Gayle Hunnicutt. Also welcome back my next guest, and I present a most presentable presenter in Julian Pettifer.
And in the brown shorts, Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. Delighted to have with me again on my left that charming actress and comedian Sheila Steafel. And on my right, that marvellous actor, Robert Powell.
Ting on the bell, we get the first word. That first word is patters. And you may recall that in this instance, Frank Muir and his team will define patters 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are stumas, no good, one's all right. That's the one that Arthur and co tried to pick out. So off you go, Frank, with patters.
And you may recall, too, that lawn tennis didn't just evolve, it was actually invented by a Major Winkfield in the last century. And you all remember the name he gave it. Neither do I. It'll come back to me, but it was never called that. It wasn't called tennis either until quite recently. And round about the 1900s, in Oxford and Cambridge colleges, it was called patters. And the corridors used to ring with the cry of, "I say, anyone for patters?"
Is that it?
Yes. And that's how they used to speak, Arthur. You won't remember, you won't remember. Julian Pettifer's turn now.
Of course, anyone who comes from a veterinary background, as I do, will know that patters is in fact a disease of poultry, which the birds pick up from infected ground. Its real name is Actinomyces pattersoni, after a veterinary surgeon called Patterson, who actually first identified the disease. I'm not going to describe the symptoms because they're not very nice. But that's patters.
Good enough. Now, Gayle Hunnicutt.
Well, patters is a name used in the Midlands for pigs' trotters, especially when pigs' trotters are cooked with potatoes and red cabbage, which is delicious. And I'm sure you'll all remember in Fame is the Spur that Rachel Rosing was proposed to, rather unromantically, over a dish of patters.
I remember that.
Yes. Everyone went a bit quiet then, as though well, I don't know. So they say it's a disease of hens, a disease of poultry. It's pigs' trotters, and it's a name for tennis. And Arthur has his choice.
Oh dear, it really is terrible. I somehow... Your pigs' trotters, what odious thing to be proposed to over pigs' trotters in the Midlands, but it could well be. We have a lot of diseases. They're usually diseases of cattle on this programme, but we could easily take in a poultry disease invented by a gentleman called Patterson.
We ever had a disease of team captains?
Let's invent one, Frank. On the other hand, Frank's is so simple, and of course tennis used, I think, to be called pat-ball at one point.
You've got it.
So on the usually means I haven't. On the whole, Frank, I go for your tennis, your patters.
Ah, it was Frank. True or bluff, Frank? Does patters mean tennis, or tennis mean patters?
Perhaps we could suffer from bluff fluke as team captain.
Oh, come on!
Oh, there, I told you it was.
Splendid, yes. Tennis is, or was, sometimes called patters. Well, it might be. We have the next word. It is skir. That's how I'd pronounce it. Arthur?
Skir, indeed, is correct. Well, now, you've probably thought, all of you, Frank and friends, that when the calves of hornless cattle are born, the calves themselves are hornless, and you would very often be right. Sometimes you are not right. A calf is born with a sort of rudimentary horn, not attached firmly to the skull,
Dangling.
that's sort of flopping about a little bit on a bit of cartilage, and that is known as the skir.
What is?
This rudimentary horn.
Oh,
of
not the
which
bit
I'm
it dangles
speaking.
from. Right. Go.
Yes, that's rather important. Now, Robert Powell's go.
Skir. Apiarists, in fact, blanch at the very mention of the word skir, because its presence in a beehive lowers productivity therein quite considerably. It is a fungus, a kind of fungus that is to be found on the walls of beehives occasionally. And the little scavenger bees, who are supposed to be going around scavenging, have to expend a great deal of energy removing said skir from the beehive.
Can't be much fun. Now, Sheila Steafel.
Well, now, if you worked on a sheep farm, stage 2, which is after the sheep have been sheared and you've got all this mess, all this furry, woolly mess, the shearers would hand it to you and you would pick up a skewer, which is a little round brush with wire, whatever they are, bristles, and you'd clean all the muck out of this wool before it went to the next stage. That's what a skewer is. It's a brush.
OK, they say it's this rudimentary horn which is shed. It's fungus within the beehive, and it's a brush used for brushing the little bits from raw wool. Frank, your choice.
Oh, sorry.
Come on.
I'm deeply indebted to you for the privilege of choosing first and... Eh? oh, golly. The dangling bits of horn, I don't know, surely they'd knock off, wouldn't they? I mean, this sort of hat rack, yet unformed, on the deer. Fungus and beehives, I do hope it's not that. It just holds no charm at all, does it? And the poor drones being sent in, the slave bees to scrape it off. Or a wire brush to clean wool. If you get in the wire brush, you tangle up. You know. Wire bristles, I think it's Arthur. It's old Uncle Arthur pulling the wool over our combs.
Could he do such a thing? Arthur, were you teasing? No.
Another bluff fluke.
Absolutely. So there, it is now 1-1 because skewer indeed means that rudimentary horn on the beast. Moxie is the next word. Julian, you'll go.
Moxie. Well, gives me a chance to shine, I hope, or perhaps glitter a little bit amongst all these actors, because this is an American slang word, moxie, and it actually means somebody with drive, energy, get up and go. And I've even got a quote for Damon Runyon to prove it, if I can try and do this. He's supposed to have remarked of someone he disapproved of, "He's a petty larceny kind of guy with no more moxie than a canary bird."
It's deeply impressive.
I'm going to say he'll be getting his equity card too. Very good.
You won't be allowed to do commercials.
No. Gayle.
A moxie is a 3-wheel taxi in Bangkok. It's a sort of tricycle kind of affair. And the great disadvantage of the moxie is, first of all, that it's very noisy. It sounds rather like a lawnmower. When there are lots of moxies around, it's extremely unpleasant when you're travelling. But even more dangerous is the fact that as a passenger, you must sit in the front of the driver. And the drivers are rather reckless, which can lead to problems. In Saigon, what is known in Bangkok as a moxie is a cyclopus.
Oh, my dear, you've muddled us so tremendously, I don't know where I am.
Well, I dare say she was trying a bit of that, Arthur. Jolly good, I say. Frank.
The word for lawn tennis is something like cyclopus, isn't it? Oh, no. This is a moxie of something that most girls don't like having, and boys don't mind quite as much. In Gloucestershire, in Wiltshire, that is to say, it's a freckle. And, in fact, a boy or girl with lots of freckles was also called a moxie. Furthermore, the famous Gloucestershire cricketer, E.J. Foster, had so many of the little brown darlings that he was known as Moxie Foster.
I never heard anything like these. Definitions go on forever.
It only seems like it, Arthur. Come. Brace up. It's a Singapore taxi. It means, in America, gut or drive, and it's a freckle. So, Robert, your choice.
I'm absolutely none the wiser. US slang, it sounds as if it should be, doesn't it? That's what worries me greatly about it. Tricycle. I have a vision of somebody with a passenger in a little basket in front of him. I can't believe that. With their little legs dangling down. Oh dear, it's too dangerous. And there's a great cricket fan. I've never heard of Moxie Foster, I must admit.
You've never...
I've never heard of Moxie Foster.
Then
I'm going to go for Julian. I think it's an American slang.
The American slang, Julian, you said it. True or bluff?
American slang.
He now declares himself.
I mean, doxy we all heard of, haven't we? We've all heard
Loxy.
of doxy and loxy, but...
Bullseye, sir. Yes, moxie does mean that, and it is in Dave and Runny, and as soon as I heard the definition, I think I knew that one. One of the very few that I have known. Nestalic, I suppose. Pronounce it anyway. Robert, your turn first.
Do you remember when you were at school and there was always one child whose work was held out in front of all the other children? And teacher used to say, "Why can't you write like him?" Because it was always beautiful copperplate handwriting. And we all used to hate him. Well, if that same scene had taken place in Persia, let us say, for want of a better place, it would have been called Nestalic. Nestalic is an old Persian form of handwriting, which is very flowery, copperplate, used by scribes mostly, as the only ones who could write like that, for formal and religious documents. That's what it is.
Right. Sheila, your go.
Well, now, Nestalic is not Russian milk chocolate. And it's, in fact, not even Nestalic, it's Nestalic. Right? And if you had been a Serbian trooper in the First World War, you would have been fairly annoyed if they'd handed you out a Nestalic, because it is, or was, a military rifle manufactured in Czechoslovakia. And it had a tremendous kickback when you shot it. So they didn't like it. It is, in fact, a military rifle, a Nestalic.
All right. Now it's Arthur's go.
Come with me also to Russia, because Nestalic is a corruption of a Russian word, heard frequently up and down the steppes in the old days, because the Russians used to have enormous families, 10, 20, headaches unknown, on they went. And Nestalic is a word meaning a mother, with an enormous number of children. Queen Victoria, God rest her soul, would have qualified to be a Nestalic.
It is then, they say, the mother of a large family, famille nombreuse, a rifle, a Serbian one, I think I remember, and script in Persia, not Turkey, Persia. Julian.
Goodness me. Well, this mother with many, this babushka, I don't think. No. The military rifle, I'm not very keen on that, because I got a feeling that word wouldn't really have been in the dictionary. Now, as for this very boring Persian copperplate, which it's yeah,
Not boring if you're Persian.
No, I'm sure it's very interesting if you're Persian. I'll go for the copperplate.
You choose the script, the Persian script. Yes, it was Robert, it was you who said it. True or bluff? Here it comes.
Touché, Mr. Pettifer.
Yes. Sometimes, if it's Persian, it's also true. Not invariably, as you will remember. Puttany, I would call it. Gayle?
I would call it puttony. A puttony at harvest time in Hungary is found in all the vineyards. It's a rather large box made of wooden staves, which contains about 25 quarts and is used for carrying grapes from the vineyard to the wine press. A puttony is unique to Hungarian vineyards.
Okay. Cheer up, everyone. It's all right.
This is a goodie, this one, Al. Art. The patany was a type of blanket manufactured as one of the, last century only, one of the wares of the Hudson's Bay Company. A very thick blanket with a kind of pile like a towel, and it was called a patany because this blanket was made in Patany Bay. Well, what you've got to work out is that's a bluff, a double bluff, a treble
So now, let's hear from Julian. His turn.
Of course, the pronunciation of this word is entirely wrong because, in fact, in the West Country where this word originates, it was Putney, rather like Putney Bridge. If you remember what those Halloween lanterns looked like, made from pumpkins, they're particularly, I think, common in the United States, but maybe known here as well. Well, this is a similar kind of thing, except it was made from a hollowed-out mangel wurzel. with a candle stuck in it, and this was put outside on Halloween. And in fact, in some parts of the West Country, Halloween was even known as Putney Night.
So then it is a box, a Hungarian box for carrying grapes. It's a lantern made out of mangel wurzel, and it's a blanket from the neighbourhood of Hudson's Bay. So Sheila must have her choice.
I'm going to ask for help. I've never been so affronted in my life. Frank, that was very cruel. May we consult, please? What do you...
Meanwhile...
excuse us a moment. No, I dare you see we've been... No, right, I've been thrust upon my own. Now then, Julian, I'll start with you. I mean, really, the Halloween mangel wurzel.
Haven't you seen them?
And Putney, and he may well be right.
With
it's
faces
so awful.
on them. Faces, you carve faces in them.
Thick blanket, Frank. It's and this box. I think they're all dreadful. It's pin sticking time.
That's the way it usually goes here,
yeah.
Sheila.
Frank.
Frank. She darted at him, yes.
Frank,
what
you
did you say?
are
Was
it.
it? Oh, that
you
was
are.
the blanket, yes. True
Yes,
or
you're
bluff?
the blanket, Frank. And I'm sorry, chaps. Oh.
Nothing. No.
It's going to be Julian.
Nothing to do with blankets. Who gave the true definition of Putney? It's coming up now.
Oh, it's there.
There it is. It's what they call the wooden basket in Hungary that they carry the grapes from the field to the press with. And now, 3-2, we have Segar, and it's Sheila Steafel's turn.
Yes, a segar. Actually, they're very popular at the moment. It's a rather sexy garment, I think. It's a leather jerkin that used to be worn by riders, horse riders, around the Welsh valleys. And it had very big patch pockets that the riders could put their lunches or the odd bottle or the odd motherless whatever they found. Tucked in. The odd heart, Frank, certainly. So it's a very sexy leather jacket.
Splendid. Now let's hear from Arthur.
Well, now, do you remember that lovely television interlude picture of a potter shaping a pot? Oh, wasn't it lovely and restful? Can't we have it back? Never mind. And I dare say you wondered what happened after he had shaped this delicate pot, how to protect it in the kiln. Well, he puts it into the kiln, and round this piece of delicate pottery, he places a sort of oven-proof bit of clay called a segar.
Called a saga?
It's a saga. I beg your pardon?
It used to be called a saga.
Well, it's called a segar now. Frank, try not to interfere. It's called a segar, and it's a lovely piece of protective clay which is put round this delicate piece of pottery that's to be fired. Technical word.
Like the potter.
Let us hear now from Robert Powell. It's his go.
If any of you have ever stood behind a camel for any length of time, and somebody was to offer you a lift in a segar, then you'd probably turn it down and take a taxi, because it is in fact a camel litter. It's not like a very large cat basket. It is like a stretcher that goes with two poles that goes on the back of a camel, and they pull merchandise and sometimes very unfortunate people.
Right enough. It's a jerkin, coming back into fashion, so Sheila says. It's that clay case that goes round the pot to protect it in the kiln, and it's a litter drawn by a camel or camels. Gayle, your choice.
Well, let me see here. Arthur, I'm not at all sure that I believe in this very peaceful bit of potting you've been watching on television, which is now no longer with us, and that the oven-proof clay is protected by, is that right? That was what it was. Near enough. No, I don't think so. A leather jerkin in Wales for putting all your bits in. It sounds like a very useful garment. I think I'd quite like one. But I'm not sure I think that's what a sager is. I would like to plump for Robert's camel litter as opposed to kitty litter, which is pulled behind camels in the desert.
Oh, plump away, yes. It's what you do when you get into one of these things, I dare say. I plump into it. No, I mustn't go on. Robert, declare yourself. Oh, no! Now let us see who did give the true definition.
No.
Oh, yes. And you know, I took your point, Frank, because we all remember from the days, the antediluvian days of What's My Line, the saga maker's bottom knocker.
Yeah.
But I dare say it's spelt differently in different parts of the country. Yes.
You never know on this programme.
Very interesting, though, isn't it? And an interesting score, 3-all.
I remember the tune. Did you hear me hum it when you did
I'm afraid I did. Afterwards, I think, Frank, I'll require an encore. What's the next word, though? Yes, it's Mokes or Moax, I suppose. Frank, it's your turn.
I could sing it, then you couldn't stop me.
Slip it in there.
Word that don't be why we do. Mokes actually gives off a rather nasty, penetrating smell, which gets up your hooter if you are strolling near a brewery on brewing day. Take your malt, hot water, stir it round with a paddle, preferably with one hand, so that you can hold your nose with the other. What you've made is the Mokes.
That's it. Oh, it's more than enough for the time being. Julian's turn.
Well, Mokes is, in fact, this is childhood lore. This is playground stuff. It's one of those extremely silly and boring games which, fortunately, are no longer played. It's a bit like scissors, paper, stone. But in this case, instead of scissors, paper, stone, what you have is two people, or one of them. One of the participants in this game actually throws up, shall we say, 6 fingers, and his opponent has to guess simultaneously how many fingers he's going to come up with. Yes. That's Mokes. I mean, it's not really likely, I think, to catch on in the age of Space Invaders, but that's Mokes.
And so now, Gayle Hunnicutt.
Mokes is a word which I first heard staying in the Highlands, because Mokes is in fact an in-word amongst deer stalkers for the footprints of deer. And I know Arthur will be pleased to know that male Mokes are usually very regular, while female Mokes form an irregular pattern.
What do you mean by regular, dear? I hope they're all regular. If not, we can give them a little something.
So they say that it's the track's made by deer. It's a mixture of malt and water, and it is a child's game, or it was a child's game. Arthur, to choose?
Well, now, we've had a lot of childhood games on...
We're in one.
Well said.
And it didn't absolutely ring true, though, of course, it may well be true. Dear dear stalker footprints. Oh, my. Of course, it could well be that. But somehow... it's such a ghastly name for what may be such an odious smell. I think it's your smell, Frank.
Oh, dear. Could have been phrased more kindly. Frank or Bluff?
Come on, come on.
It's not all that bad a smell. I've walked past breweries and smelled it. Seemed all right.
Close up.
Oh, close up. Yeah. Well. Try again. 4-3. How interesting. Now we have what I'd call quirly, and it's Arthur to tell you about it.
Well, now, Quirly was, amongst Victorian parlourmaids, a very popular type of hairdo. I don't think either of the charming ladies with us has gone in for a Quirly, because you apparently back comb, whatever that may mean, the hair, and twirl it up into a sort of spiral bun on top of the head. Took a long time. I don't doubt looked quite pleasing when done, but just a sort of twirly-quirly bit of hair done into a bun on top of the nut by Victorian parlourmaids. Oh, look at your quirly.
And now, Robert Powell.
Well, if you ever ask the way in Western Ireland, and you've had the reply, well, if I was you, I wouldn't start from here. You might also get the reply, is if I was you, I wouldn't be going up there, because that's a Quirly. And you may well ask, what is a Quirly? And a Quirly is rather like this definition. It is a road that leads you nowhere.
Ooh. And now, Sheila, let's hear from you.
In the old days, in the US of A, on the prairies, you might have been stopped by a bloke on a horse, and he might have said, "Hey, Mac, you got a spare curly?" I'll rephrase that. Curly. Curly. He probably had a spare curly, but never a spare curly.
Was hairpin.
Or roll me a quirly, Mac, or something like that, because a quirly is an American roll-up cigarette. Loose tobacco, roll up, but old-fashioned. They don't use that anymore now. Not nowadays.
Right, it's a cigarette, it is alleged. It's a blind alley in Ireland, and it's a hairdo of parlourmaids. And Frank homes in swiftly, because this is the very last question.
Well, yes, the answer is crystal... Oh, dear. The answer is crystal clear. Two of them went for hurly-quirlies and twirlies, and one didn't, and I choose the one who didn't, which is Robert Powell's.
He did say that it was a blind alley. True or bluff? Here it comes.
What was the answer?
Shall we know? Yes, indeed. Let us swiftly hear the true, or rather see, perhaps, the true definition. It's coming now. It's there. I know it's there. Suspense is dreadful. There it is. It's a sort of rolled cigarette, but there the scores are 5-3 without question. Arthur Marshall's team has won. And let us have a little look at the plucky losers. There they are.
Oh,
Seething with discontent, but there you are. We'll be back next time with more words that didn't quite catch on. Till then, goodbye from Julian Pettifer, Robert Powell, Gayle Hunnicutt, Sheila Steafel, Frank Muir, and Arthur Marshall. Goodbye. Hello again. It's Call My Bluff, the Thinking Man's Ludo, and bullying off, we have Arthur Marshall.
Good evening. I'm very glad to have with me triumphantly again Sheila Steafel.
Good evening.
And once more on my right, Robert Powell.
Hello. And the Sage of Egham, Frank Muir.
Good evening. Good evening. And of course, once again, I have with me our last week's semi-successful team. On my right, Gayle Hunnicutt. And on my left, Julian Pettifer. Good evening.
Let's try for the first word. Usually comes up when you do that. There it is. Well, aung or aang, I don't know. They'll pronounce it every which way, I don't doubt. But it's Arthur Marshall & Co. who must define it 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are no good. One's okay. That's the one, of course, that Frank & Co. try and pick out. So what about aung, Arthur?
Aung. Aung. It's the wool of the Tibetan musk ox. The wool, Frank, of the Tibetan musk
Arthur, go out and come in again.
And you may be thinking it's the wool from the top of the Tibetan musk ox. Not at all. It's the wool from the underbelly of the Tibetan musk ox. Well, now you want to know how much wool it produces, and apparently it's as soft as cashmere. Well, now your bull musk ox produces 6 pounds of Tibetan wool, and your cow, if you'll forgive the word, musk ox, produces 5 pounds of Tibetan wool.
Surely it's a musk hen.
Don't confuse us. I'm already confused quite a lot.
No, but the thing is, it's a new tongue twister, the leaf police and all like that,
That's right.
isn't it?
It's the wool of the Tibetan musk ox.
I think you should have left it alone. I'm not going to say it until I absolutely have to, I'll tell you that. So, Robert Powell's go now.
Dear, if you were around certain seaports in China and you happen to be in a bar and overhear a conversation between Chinese door-to-door salesmen, it could be very possible that you would hear one say to another, he would say it in Chinese, but I'll do it in English, oh dear, they've given me the ongs again. This is because for a Chinese door-to-door salesman to get the ongs is really not a very good thing to have at all. An ong is, you know how they all live in ships in the harbour, the junks are all sort of lashed together. And if you're a door-to-door salesman, it means you've got a boat hop. And collective junks, as a boat's houses tied together, are called ongs.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, he said it was Chinese, didn't he? I mean, you can't accuse him of having fooled you in that way. Sheila, it's your go now.
Well, I'm sure if Frank got this word, he would be singing, oh, a-hunging we will go, a-hunging we will go, because...
You run a dreadful risk,
It is,
Sheila.
I know, I don't care, do you see, I don't care. Because it is aung, and it is a doing word, it is a verb, and it is to do with elephants in the Burmese forest. And the way you, not you personally speaking, with due reference to your nose, Frank, I wasn't being personal, but what these elephants do when they aung is that they pick up the odd tree trunk, you know, and lift it and put it somewhere else.
Sort of onged.
And that is...
Anyway,
aunging is what elephants do with tree trunks. Move them from one place to another.
By elephant.
By elephant.
well, it's log rolling by elephants, as you say, and it's a cluster of junks, a lot of junks. And as Arthur told us, it is the wool of the muck's osk. I'm perfectly prepared to leave it at that. Frank, it's your choice.
Oh, thank you. I didn't understand most of them. It's a hateful roundness. Well, let's get down to it. I mean, it's quite clear, isn't it, to everybody what it is? The muskrat, ox, cox, socks, which I put down here, and so Tibet. Just to remind me what fandango it was. Could be quite interesting because it's like the wool of underbelly soft that you make expensive pullovers of. Now this salesman with the junk food going along and sort of supermarket along of boats, or it's something to do with tree trunks. I think, and I'm sure the world is with me, that it must be the junk food salesman walking along the line of boats.
Well, did he say that precisely? It doesn't really matter. Far too late now.
No, don't
call your
interrupt,
guest back.
Robbie.
Robert, declare yourself.
Let's all go home. Yeah,
Nothing.
I'm not surprised.
I thought he gave us to understand it was a sort of assembly of junks. However, it's all water over the bridge now. Who gave the true definition of ang?
What's no?
Yes. Okay. It is the act of log rolling by elephants. And 1-0 is the score. And later, Frank?
Oh, what?
Later?
Later, yes. Well, with your later, you get a curious kind of effect because it is a religious mania to which some Javanese in Java are prone. But when I say prone, I do not mean flat on the ground. Oh, no. Because it is accompanied, this religious mania, by much waving of the arms and kicking of the legs and weird cries. Later.
Beautifully done.
I think I'd sooner he sang. Not now, though. Julian, your turn.
Are you mad, Bob?
Yes, indeed. Silly me. Julian.
Well, those on the other side of the room who've had the benefit of a classical education, of course, Arthur being one of them, will know that lata is, of course, a Latin word, and it means a lamp. It looks a little bit like one of those Aladdin's lamp, usually made of terracotta, and was normally very often used by the Romans as a nightlight. And of course, it was a very useful little lamp, because think how many times it must have prevented a shrill, childish cry in the middle of the night, Mater, mater, homo horrendus vidi. Which, of course, you roughly translated, of course, means, Mum, I've just seen the bogeyman. And Lata put a stop to all that. None of that with the Lata.
What's he talking about?
There are those who'd call you a show-off there, Julian. No, jolly good stuff. The more Latin, the better. Gayle.
Well, lata is something that I don't think any of us are wearing tonight, although I did look closely. I don't think Sheila is, and I'm not, although we are both wearing silk, because lata is a very special kind of silk, which is woven and made from silkworms in Hawaii, where they especially domesticate these little worms, which they then feed on mulberry leaves. Oh. Now, from these little worms, from their cocoons, they take the silk, which is very, very fine, very special, and they weave wonderful sarongs. And this special product is called lata silk.
Oh. Right. So it's from these particular silkworms, and it's a Roman oil lamp, and it's this kind of religious hysteria.
If you fire at them, you get shot silk.
Oh!
I'm just filling in while they make up their mind.
Very nice. Arthur, your turn.
Half a mo.
Don't take my word for it, Arthur.
We are fully divided.
Yes.
I'm really rather tempted by old Lofty's Javanese religious mania and those sort of paroxysms that went with it. They were very jolly. And Gayle, you're so pretty, and your kind of Hawaiian silkworm worming away. It was so nice, too. And also this Latin nightlight. Oh, what is one to say? Well, I'm advised on my left that it's the Latin nightlight, so I go with Sheila.
Were you well advised? We shall now see. It was Julian who said it, true or bluff?
There we go.
He looks rather well pleased. No, Latin or no, it wasn't true. Who gave the true definition of lata or later?
Never mind.
Religious hysteria is what it is, 1-1, and now we have a word, rant a pike, I suppose you call it? Yes, why not? Robert Powell's go.
If Alan Lamb, the English cricketer who was born in South Africa, was to say to David Gayle, let's say, I'll meet you in the pavilion after the game, he might at the back of his mind have this word, rentepeek, as is how it would have been said by the South Africans, because it is in fact an Afrikaans word, meaning a meeting place or a rendezvous. Not used very much now, probably, mostly, I should think, round the end of the 19th century, beginning of that, Boer War time. Rentepeek means meeting place.
OK, now Sheila, her go.
Familiar site in the River Clyde in Scotland used to be Rantapikes. Going along rather slowly, they are in fact small three-masted schooners, and they used to carry non-perishable stuff, so it didn't really matter how long they took. But they're rather elegant, rather nice. Ship things.
Sort of a ship, right? OK, Arthur.
A rantapike is an aggressive or argumentative person, as you might guess from the name, and also for a rather uncooperative animal. And Wat Tyler, the militant upriser, when he... Frank, you can always learn. When he unseated that horse, some royal horse, Richard II, if I'm not mistaken, at the subsequent trial, he was referred to as that upstart rantapike.
Well, it's an argumentative chap, it said. It's a ship, I think you said Scotland, Sheila, and it's a place of rendezvous, South African. Julian's choice. Passions are running high.
It might not be, don't
I don't know about this South African thing, really, you know. I know a bit of Afrikaans, and it doesn't sound to me very much like it, but, you know, it might be. Three-masted schooners, yes. And this aggressive animal or something, I don't know, I don't quite get that one at all. I think I'm going to go for the three-masted schooner. Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Right, it was Sheila who said that, wasn't it? True or bluff? She has to own up now. Oh, yes. Sort of a three-masted schooner round Scotland, I think she said. Plot is the next word. Julian Pettifer.
Well, again, I'm being called upon to try and compete with the professionals here, because this actually is a Yiddish word. In this case, it's a slang verb, which means to blot. You know, blot, it's very expressive. Blot, to sit down wearily, to flop with exhaustion. The famous Victorian cellist, Abraham Kober, is said to have written, or did in fact write in his diary, "All day we are rehearsing, and I am like a wet rag, fit only to blot."
Africa, did he?
He was a South African Johannesburg. My range is limited. I have to make it.
He may have been a cellist, but he was a feature player as well, wasn't he? Yes, a character actor, really. Gayle, your go.
Well, down in Tennessee, we had these kind of hound dogs, and these hound dogs are known as plots. Well, these here plots, we take them up in the mountains to round up the bears. And when we come down from there, they're very funny. They're rather big kind of dogs with floppy ears, and they look a bit like spaniels. And these dogs are called plots because they were bred by that very famous American, Mr. Jonathan Plot.
You see, because you're American, for all I know, you actually come from where you've been doing. It sounded all right to me. Indeed, it's the best I've heard on this show. Mind you, well, anyway. No, very good, Gayle. Frank, let's see what you can do.
Come with me to the beer keller.
Oh, good.
In Bavaria. And there we are. In Wednesday stays and hope my house ice my soup. And what are you holding? I mean, it could be a hat with a shaving brush, but more likely it's a liter, a stein of beer, which is a China thing with designs on it. And yours is very heavy. Why is it very heavy? Because the handle and the top are carved very elaborately in meerschaum, or it could be in pewter, and they're figures, hunting figures, or maidens, perchance. They're a decorated stein of beer, a plot.
So it's a tankard which allowed Frank both to sing and do an accent. It's also to flop down. It's a Jewish expression, and it's a South of America dog, which Gayle told us about. So, Robert, it's your choice.
Well, on the strength of the fact that it did actually give Frank a chance to sing and do an accent, I think it's almost... it's almost worth plumping for that, but I'm not going to.
Oh.
It's plot meaning a South African fiddler, was it? No, have I got confused?
It was a
Cellist.
a Yiddish word to flop down.
Oh, I see. I got a little. Yes.
Yeah.
But the chap who used it was a cellist.
He was a cellist. South African. No, Yiddish.
And
that's right.
For some insane reason, Gayle, I love the idea of a plot being a dog.
That hunts bears.
Well, she certainly did the best accent. Now, let's see if she was telling the truth or whether she was just teasing. Draw a bluff.
I tell you, Robert, I'll just loan you my plot anytime you
There!
want.
Thank you.
Wholly authentic. Splendid. 2 all. Plot certainly means that kind of a dog. 2 all again. Yes. Now, kishy is the next word. Sheila, what of kishy?
Now, if I said, and this is absolutely true, I happen to be kishy, which does not mean I get over-amorous when I'm drunk. That's right. What it actually means is that I'm left-handed. It's another word for being left-handed. You know, there's, what do they say? Keggy, gammy, and kishy is one of the words. And if you want to know where it comes from, I'll tell you in a moment. Yes, North and West Ridings of Yorkshire that comes from.
Righty-ho. Arthur Marshall's go.